Welcome to the Biohacker Babes podcast. My name is Renee Belz, and I'm tuning in with my sister Lauren and our special guest today, Freddie Kimmel. We are live at the Biohacking Congress event in Las Vegas today, so this is a very special day for all of us. Thanks for joining us.
I'm honored to be here.
Oh, we're so honored to have you with us. You're a good
Always.
friend, but you're also such an inspiration to us as a health coach, biohacker. Freddie, you have an amazing story for our audience. They've heard you before, but we can't get enough of you. You just have an amazing story of healing and transformation, metastatic cancer, which led to Lyme, heavy metals. The list goes on and on. You were in and out of the hospital, multiple surgeries. You kind of did it all, but you're here today, thriving.
Yeah.
You sang on every stage I've ever seen you on, beautiful. You were just life is good.
Yeah.
How did you get from there to here?
There to here. It's a great question. I mean, we're at this event and it's all about biohacking and optimizing, and I had reached a point in metastatic cancer and that experience, in Lyme, in autoimmunity, in going through the energetic vibration of abdominal adhesions, where Western medicine had said, you're good. It's going to be an opiate or you're a liability. So it was actually kind of a hands-off approach, which led me to all the stuff that we talk about. The deuterium-depleted water, the hyperbaric oxygen, the red light therapy. What I often say is that through one door being closed, I just started to ask a different question. And so I got different answers. And the big flip for me was truly a snowball effect, right? It was getting certified as a functional medicine health coach, which deepened my understanding about healing or wellness. Adding in my own knowledge plus amazing supplementation plus pulsed electromagnetic field plus oxygen therapy plus breath work, plus plant medicine. So I think it all snowballs, and it's hard for me to say that there's one thing that brought me here, but I'm here at the Biohacking Congress representing the Beautifully Broken podcast and AmpCoil. And AmpCoil is the tech that I travel with on a plane. It's the tech that I use 4 times a week, and it is the combination of pulsed electromagnetic fields and frequency therapy. And it's probably the thing, and I mentioned this in my talk today, which for the people at home, I was going through this expression. I say energetic expression because I don't want to be associated with a disease condition or a label. And I've really gotten into the habit of breaking that patterning. I don't know if you noticed I said that a lot today. It's like the energetic vibration of Lyme, chronic fatigue, whatever that is. But I was going through the vibration of going to the emergency room for abdominal adhesions and very intense cramping and removal of the small bowel until I started using AmpCoil on the regular. And my nervous system, the pliability of the scar tissue, everything started to shift when I did that, 3 to 4 times a week for 4 months. So that's part of why I'm here.
And how did you first discover that, the AmpCoil? How did you even come across that technology?
I was addicted to podcasts and still am. I get most of my information on podcasts. It's just, if we can just sidebar for that, it's unfiltered content. People can speak their truth. I came across a podcast on YouTube from Scott Ferguson, who I believe is the Better Health Guy podcast. And he had the founders of that technology on, and I heard them, and their words were so resonant and right. I often tell the story. I was on a treadmill or the Stairmaster. I think it was the Stairmaster at the gym. And I was just trudging along, right? And I'm tired and I'm fatigued and I'm so achy. And I had just gotten out of a mold exposure. And it was like Lyme, abdominal adhesions, mold exposure, failed attempt at binding or chelating metals and mold. And I was at a point where I was like, I don't have it in me to do another thing. I don't have another Everest to climb right now. and I heard this podcast about magnetics and the energetic body and the self-healing body. And I got off the treadmill or a Stairmaster. I pulled out my credit card. I walked to the corner of the gym in Jersey City, and I bought one. I didn't try it. At the time, the version I bought was $11,000. Right? At the
you
time,
really took a risk there.
Yeah.
A risk, and I was doing Broadway music theater at the time. I was not in an abundant state of like finances. I just felt, I was like, this thing is gonna do it, you know, and I went for it. And from session 1, which you put a modified Tesla coil on your body, I felt vibration throughout my whole body. Not everybody experiences that. Not everybody feels vibration with the AmpCoil. Some people do, some people don't. My teeth were buzzing. My scalp was moving. I felt energy everywhere. And I was so fatigued, I was in. You know, so I did the deep dive.
And would you say your intuition is what drove you to make the purchase?
100%. My intuition and my understanding of intuition has gotten really clear since using subtle energetic tools like light therapy, like pulse magnetics, and it really opened my door to the eyes around this technology field of the validity that there are really great things out there. The journeys on AmpCoil, whether it's a chakra journey or a heart chakra journey or a brain reboot, I personally think bring you to a deeper level of awareness in the body where you can make an intuitive, heartfelt decision. I feel like it cleared up what my true north was. Mm-hmm. And I've just made better and better decisions about my health. I haven't necessarily found, the holy grail of biohacks. And I don't think AmpCoil is the holy grail of biohacks. For me, it was like this, you know how people say they're peeling away the layers of the onion and there'll always be more? Mm-hmm. My friend Casper gives this great analogy. He's like, I hate that picture because it's stinky. And when you're done, there's nothing left. And so he gives this example of it's like a light bulb covered with dirt. And I feel like as I've gotten into the clearing away of the dirt on this light bulb, or you can think about like an oxidized headlight on a car, as you polish and get away little specks of calcium, that your internal light starts to really shine. And I feel that. I witness that in myself. I witness that in my words, how I speak, whether it's on stage or the podcast or wherever. It feels like it's very easy for me to connect with my heart's language. That's the best way to put it.
I feel you as a light bulb very much. And I've seen you just in the last few years, like just a little bit less dissolves, disintegrates off of the bulb, and you're shinier. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. You talk about biopassing. Mm-hmm. A lot of us are like jumping, you say, from one lily pad to the next. Like, biohackers, I feel like, claim that's not what we do, but we're all just looking for a magic pill. It's like, it's hardwired in us. We're just to find that solution because we want an answer. We want something to be black and white. We want our suffering to end. And it's so interesting that you were just so convinced to buy this one piece of tech, but it's deeper than that because it's frequency and sound, and that's like what our bodies are made of. We are dynamic. We are in flow. So can you talk about like the essential nature of frequency? Like, why do we need it, and why are more people not talking about it?
Well, from my understanding, and the people who have come before me, these great thought leaders, whether it's people like Dr. Pollack and pulsed electromagnetic field, whether it's Nikolai Tesla or Royal Rife or the patrons of bioenergetics, we are frequency. Everything in the universe is a frequency. It's a vibratory pattern. And so my favorite way to think about the human body's range is the idea that something will have a different frequency as a result of its texture. So right away, I can do a self-scan, and I can say fingernail, tooth, earlobe, eyeball, hip bone, liver. If we were to put those elements on a table, we'd be like, well, they all have a very specific tactile touch and sensation and texture. And as a result of that texture, or one could say their metabolic process, they have a specific vibration. So when we're talking about AmpCoil or frequency or bioresonance, we are broadcasting the beneficial range of a tissue or a system or an energetic emotional pattern to the body. And through the process of entrainment, we're waiting for the body to pick up the lesson plan. So it would be like listening to Spanish like every week. What's the system of language learning where it's just the audio process? Is it Rosetta Stone? It's Rosetta Stone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Took a smart drug today. I pulled that out of my... I was like, I do not know the answer to this, but Rosetta Stone.
That came right out.
Blink. It's like learning a new language. So we're listening, and that is the way it happens. We'll often tell people, play the circulation 2 journey or the tendon and ligament journey. Play it again, play it 4 times, play it every other day. Keep working on it until your body picks up that vibration. Now, we might need to, and very often, it's not always the spot treatment that we want it to be, right? Sometimes people will buy a device for chronic pain, and they'll notice that maybe their thoughts are clearer and they're sleeping better, but their chronic pain isn't gone. So to use that tool as far as frequency, I think it can open different doorways in which you can examine other layers, of which there's a pattern of holding, right? We could look at the work that plant medicine allows us to do. Where is the holding happening? Or that idea that, we're very strong as human beings, and I could hold a glass of water, but if I hold it for a day, my arm would get tired. If I hold it for a week, I'd probably have tendonitis in my elbow. So it's like holding that pattern of resentment or shame for 20 years, 30 years. That's very light. It's a load I can burden or bear. But maybe that layer of the emotional body is what is at the root of our chronic pain. And so I think I'm just leaning into that and learning that, and seeing where frequency, vibration, everything, right? I'll go back to plant medicine or mushrooms. Microdosing changes our vibration, on a very, very subtle level. So we can often things come into our awareness, so we're like, how did I not see that?
Right. Yeah, well, dampening the default mode network allows for us to receive and just be. When we're so used to, there's so much doing, there's not a lot of time to receive that communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I explain frequency, like I did, and we did this, if you weren't here today, you missed a great presentation. It's streaming.
Truly.
I think our ego would like to tell you, and I have a slide for PEMF, or pulse magnetics, which I like to say, pulsed electromagnetic field. And there are biological benefits to pulse magnetics, which have been quantified by the FDA to expedite or cut in half non-union fractures or bone healing, right? And that is sodium-potassium pump, oxygenation, circulation, voltage, right? Sodium ion channels. We know what PEMF does. But I think, again, I put that slide up for my ego because I was like, this is what happens in the body. Let's be clear, the amount of cellular processes that are happening based on hydration, minerals, energetics, environment, relationship, tune, tone, and tenor at that time when you're doing the therapy, it's impossible to get all those things in a check. So we are not a lab. We're not a petri dish. So I have an idea of what's happening, but I just have this right as rain compass telling me that I should keep doing this. And I keep doing it with more consistency than any other biohack. And I keep having improvement. And now, to be clear, it's not overnight. I've coiled, it's been 3.5 years. I'm still doing it. I'm still making discoveries with the tech. Yeah.
Well, I think consistency is key for any biohack.
Right.
Whatever you feel the difference with, that you can stick with 3-4 days a week over time, that's what's going to make the change. Not like you said, the magic pill. People buy biohacks at these conferences. They do it one time and they're like, next one.
I did one cold plunge and I'm healed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the consistency is so key. But I think something you mentioned in your lecture earlier today was how it's not really healing the body or healing a disease. It's letting your body heal what's happening, right? You're removing the blocks, giving your body the information it needs, because our bodies have that innate intelligence to heal. But in 2022... there's just too much chaos that's blocking that. So, right, is that how AmpCoil is working? Is it tapping into that innate intelligence in the body?
Yeah, again, that is my belief system, that the body is a self-healing, auto-correcting body. We know this from heart rate variability. The idea that we have a nervous system tone that opens the gateway to the pathways that I just mentioned that are benefited through PEMF. The direct effect after even one session of AmpCoil, at most times, like more than most tech, is a dramatic improvement in heart rate variability, which I know you guys have had so many people on the podcast speak about that at a very high level. I'm very passionate about it because it's an instant window into what my nervous system is doing. The idea that the body is self-correcting or healing, I look at parallels. So I mentioned radical remission of stage 4 cancers in the book Cured. And they set out to disprove the idea that there was radical remission through these N=1 white paper test subjects. And they got to whatever it was, 148. And he was like, okay, they're all real. Wow. And he saw the only consistency where there was no treatment. It was a state shift. It was like that person removed themselves from their toxic relationship. They usually changed their diet. They often moved geographic locations out of the West. So whether that was, it doesn't matter if it was removal from 5G or the abusive partner or the diet. For me, it's a state shift, a dramatic state shift. They changed everything that was keeping them sick. So in the same way, frequency, it's affecting every cell, right? I said there's this one slide about using the resonance effect, the idea that there is cellular absorption of a resonance principle or sound, and cells are imprinted with a metal, a microbe, a trauma, sexual dysfunction, abuse, whatever the imprint is, and that's a vibratory pattern. So if we can broadcast love or fear or anger, or we can calm down the amygdala, that we can see a complete state shift. I just had a woman outside, your friend, Sam. From San Diego. She was like, I've got this thing on my foot, this bone thing on my left toe, and then I've been injured up here, and those two parts of my body were vibrating and fuzzy. And she was like, I think it's so neat. And she was like, what did you play? I was like, well, I played the alignment journey, the harmonizer, which is just going through the frequencies for the chakra centers. And again, you're opening up the energetic channels so everything can talk to each other in your body, which is self-correcting. How funny that the two spots you've been injured are now in this vibratory activation.
Yeah. That was my first experience with the AmpCoil. The first time you came to my house, and I was very quickly convinced to get one myself. But I just did the demo harmonizer, which is essentially we're going to sit here and we're going to let the body do what it wants to do, let the tech speak to the body.
Right.
And I had a shooting pain. I'll just say pain.
I remember that.
A lot of electricity, just a lot of feeling shooting down my leg. I have this old injury in my ankle that doesn't necessarily cause me really clear problems day to day now, but there's a lot of stored trauma there. It was never quite healed in the way that I should have healed it. And it was like electricity. It was like a rainstorm. I was like, holy crap, what's happening? Yeah. The communication.
I so remember that.
was just dialed up, and the body was like, we know what to do. We're going to send this exactly where it needs to go. And it was like a freedom was unlocked.
Amazing.
So that's really cool that I didn't make a choice. I wasn't, I allowed my body to do what it needed to do.
Yeah.
It felt really cool.
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. We just had a baby. I'm trying to think if I said this story in the stream talk, but there was a mom came in with a very small child, and the dad
was
had
constipated.
No, this is a different one. A dad, and I always say a disclaimer: kids move really fast on the AmpCoil in general because they have no belief system that they can't heal or get better. They're very pure, just like an animal does have very little placebo effect or none. In horses, there's some great study with horses and PEMF. And there's great data around biohacking with some of these tools looking at animals, a lot of them. And I'll just benchmark that for a second, go to this baby. The father had been changing the baby's diaper and had herpes. Well, for whatever reason, this child's immune system was compromised, and the baby was covered in herpes everywhere. It's little boy, penis, chest, back, lips, face. It was terrible. And they needed to use a viral suppressant pharmaceutical. Anytime they were not on the pharmaceutical, full out herpes. She connected with an owner in Connecticut, and the woman's like, we did AmpCoil for 3 weeks. It's been 9 weeks. No medication, no herpes. They stopped, and they whatever life stress happened, herpes again. So they just started again, and they're like 2 months in, no medication, no outbreaks. Now, I just want to speak to that and just say, AmpCoil did not treat that baby's viral infection. It is supporting that child's natural mechanism, and it was quick. It wasn't like 6 months. It was like 3 weeks. She's like, we're good again. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Amazing story.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
And it's working in a very unique range. AmpCoil works from 4 to 2200 hertz, essentially. And some of those are vibrations in the human energetic biofield, and some of those are above. Some of those are in the bioenergetic field, which I talked a little about in the presentation. But it's it's very unique. It's specific. It's 7 years research and development, and we're still working. We're still always trying to make things, more attuned and more in alignment.
Yeah, and we appreciate that you're always trying to upgrade it and make it better.
Yeah.
Your story reminded me of a story. I knew a gentleman probably 10 years ago. He invented kind of a similar biohacking device. It just, to keep the story short, it put you in a parasympathetic state in minutes, fast. He cured his stage 4 lung cancer. He got in trouble because his cancer was gone. And he's like, I'm not saying the machine cured my cancer.
Yeah.
It just put him in a parasympathetic state, and his body, like you were saying, I think was cleaning up his diet. He was focusing on sleep, right? He's doing all the other things, but
100%.
just allowing the body to be in that parasympathetic state, which most of us are never in.
Never.
So I love that. I love that, we both love that you said magic and woo-woo in your presentation. Can you just share a little bit? Like, why did you put that in there?
I put that in there because the egoic mind wants to look at the device, and I was building that slide deck, and I was like, I want people to know the credibility that we have, that AmpCoil is pulsed electromagnetic field, it's bioresonance, it's software design, it's 7 years research and development, and there's 7.9% magic and woo-woo, which I was joking, and we have a very limited understanding about how the body works. Right now, our view of imbalance is fractionalized in a way that's really wild. And I just want to speak to that, and I'll get to the magic and woo-woo. But when I would go to a gastroenterologist with the abdominal adhesions, they'd be like, yeah, your gut's fine. We did a colonoscopy, or we did imaging, and the tissue's not torn. And I'm like, I'm in incredible pain. And I'm so angry and depressed. And they're like, well, you need to go see a psychiatrist for that. And, nobody put together that the diminished transit time of the food was throwing off the microbiome, which was changing the neurotransmitters that I was making, which was, it could have been, right? So that person, from their understanding, they were just like, checkbox, peace. And nobody looks at the whole picture. Very few people. Even I laid off of this, but I will talk about where functional medicine has failed. Same problem. I feel like there's enough where people know to be dangerous. And they're there because they're going to say, well, it's not pharmaceuticals, it's all supplements. But again, it's natural, right? And again, that gets really expensive. You get more data. It's more confusing. It's not always actionable data. Sometimes we get more labels, right? I had that one card with all the labels of the things. I didn't lean into that, but I've been thinking a lot about it. And so the magic and woo-woo is that idea that scientists were so frustrated in 1994. They're like, what pathway is causing this organ to communicate with this one and build this neurotransmitter based off gamma waves in the brain? And they're like, let's call it the bioenergetic field. So they literally had to come up with a name because they were having trouble looking at how are Chinese medicine practitioners putting needles in one ear and having an effect on liver function, right? The idea, there's a great book called The Holographic Universe, which theorizes our universe is a holograph in which in every little piece is the whole, or in every whole there is a small piece. And it sounds really out there. But there are so many scientific experiments to support this. The idea that, and I'm going to misquote and bastardize the study, but there's 2 groups of monkeys on opposite sides of the planet that have been at one time part of the collective. And they treat one of the monkey populations with dopamine, and the dopamine in the other monkeys on the other side of the planet automatically rises because they were quantumly entangled at one point. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of the bioenergetic field, or our very small understanding of what wellness is and how words affect us, or how the intention of working with frequency, or the idea that someone could do a meditation and download a frequency, or douse with a crystal and come up with a range for the liver. Well, from my experience, I've seen it happen, I've seen it work, I've seen people have incredible results, and if you doubt it, I promise you can find confirmation bias that it is bullshit. We can all find bias of all of our belief systems.
Yeah.
You can also blind your bias, and you can confirm something through the scientific method, which is always developing. Yeah, I put that in there because our ego wants to run away with what we think it is. And when we try to break down matter, we don't know. You guys know we don't know what matter is yet, right? Particle matter, yeah. Black matter, right? We don't.
So much unknown.
There is no solid. It just keeps going. If we try to describe dark matter, you can Google it. Scientists are like, not sure yet. Yeah. But we know there's no solid, right? It's space between space between space. And the first couple people who figured this out were like freaked out for 2 weeks. Why am I not falling through the floor? And it's because there is a density to my energetic vibration. You know, I'm always entertaining this idea that I'm pretty sure this is happening, that I am a protein expression, right, of an energetic body. Yeah, it's really wild. There's this great way to explain, and I said this in an interview this morning. I was like, well, there's like 25,000 genes, 23,000, 25,000 genes. There's 140,000 protein expressions. It's like the stem cell goes in the telephone booth and comes out as Superman or Batman or Green Lantern. What's the subtle energetic field that's telling that stem cell what to be tomorrow? And so with that, this idea that there's an energetic force around all things, we don't know what's driving it, I would check my thought patterns. Like, I would be focusing on my belief system, the lies I'm telling myself, my integrity, which, listen, you know, we all have different levels of things we're willing to put out in public, right? And there's things we don't deal with, we put in the closet. We're like, that's shame, that's terrible, I can't think that thought. And it's like, that shit will make you sick. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So I like to put that woo-woo out in the conversation. Because anytime, and I also think I listen to a lot of people speak, and when people make the door for, they're like, here's what we know today. From my understanding, here's what exists. That really resonates with me. Mm-hmm. But when somebody's going to get up there and tell me like what it is, and you need this, and this supplement does this, and you have to have it, I'm like, maybe.
Maybe now, maybe. But in an hour from now,
right? Maybe
something totally different.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about this concept of. I totally lost my train of thought.
The concept of
dun, take dun, 5 dun, steps dun, back. Dun, dun, dun. What should we say?
Knees over toes guy?
The lies that we tell ourselves. The lies that we tell ourselves. I think there is so much power, and like people are always talking about affirmations, and if you really want to heal, you have to speak to yourself positively. But sometimes that can be expressed as a lie, right? If you say like you have all these things going on, you're like, I am not sick, I'm not sick, I'm not sick.
Yeah.
Well, you're essentially lying to your body. Mm-hmm. So there's a sense that like we do need to be real. Mm-hmm. We need to be in reality and truthful with what's happening.
Yeah.
But also be open-minded to the idea that we can heal. So like the biology of belief, believing that anything is possible while being truthful, like in our reality. Yes. Does that resonate with you?
It does. For me, it falls in that category of language. I try not to label things good or bad.
Yeah.
You know, that helps me a lot with reframing, without living in a state of chronic positivity. That, you know, what is it? What is the experience? Because people will say, like, it's very funny to me. The first thing people will be like, hi, loved your talk. I have HTMFR. And I'm like, oh, yes. You have it. Like, it sounds like, oh, God, how do you get it off you? Like, right away, you've given it so much power.
Such
and I'm
sentence.
Like,
right.
Is that genetic pathway expressed?
Yeah.
Are we in the body with a petri dish, with a microscope saying, wow, it's expressing right now? So it's how we speak about things. It's the and I'll say energy behind the action. Mm-hmm. So if you can take it off, good or bad, I think there's a lot of philosophy that says we pull ourselves off the wheel of life or death, right? It just becomes things coming into your field of awareness, new information about your body, your illness, your disease, whatever it is. And it's like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. Isn't that interesting that my body is doing that right now? You know, even when it's bad, I literally had, for like February 3rd to now, I started playing around with some new herbs from a company that does these bioactive carbons, and they have the potential to go very deep into the terrain. And I had a crazy flare of inflammation in my right knee, and I mean like an effusion. Like my knee was like above my knee, in my quad. I'm like, and there was a couple moments where I was like, I have Lyme again. I'm sick with this biotoxin illness, and you know, how am I going to drive this out? I need someone to treat the knee. And it was just me stepping it back and being like, I'm like looking at the knee, I'm like, isn't that interesting? And Kristen was
What's the lesson?
Yeah, Kristen was like, that looks terrible. and she was like amazed. She was like, I'm amazed that you can just be with that. Oh. Because that looks bad to me. She was giving me a compliment, but she was like, it's really why. And I was like, had the whole right side of my body was in pain. It was like inflamed. My gut was twisting. You know, it was like every bad thing that would happen to me in the last like 8 years was rolled into like a weekend. And so I was just kept living with this. I'm like, it's intense. I'm breathing through it. And all the other things passed. This will pass. Do you know what I mean? And this will pass. I'm like, really like, wow. You know, what do I need to change? What do I need to address emotionally?
Yeah, such an opportunity to keep listening because we're dynamic.
And it's hard when you're in pain, and especially when it's acute. And I'll get as frustrated as the next person and be like, I'm broken, I'm failing, I'm like, I'll never like have the body I want. You know, you name it. I can come up with a million horrible self-talk points. They're like all there. Always. I'm like, you're old, you're too old. You know, I keep telling myself this story. I was like, when am I going to be able to like be at the event and like headline an event or whatever? And I like tell my story. I'm like, and I'm this internal narrative. I'm like, you like miss your boat. You're like so old. I was like, why are you? Do you know what I mean? I'm like 44, whatever. I just turned 44. And it feels like a very high number. You know, so I'm like, feel very intimidated by that. And so I really wrestle with that narrative. It's like, and then I'll go back to my favorite thing of the month, which is like, I ask myself in my journal, I'm like, where are you climbing? Like, where are you socially climbing to? What do you need that is not now? Like, what
is the destination?
What is the destination? Because now is like so powerful and there's so much joy now. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. There is no book deal. There's no headliner stage. You know, we can easily look around at people in our community and be like, they have that. They are not happy. You know, they're not. It is so powerful just to be here and realize that we're not going anywhere. We're not retaining anything. I'm not accumulating some amount of Bitcoin that's going to be in a vault that I bring with me to layer 2 of life. Layer 2, round 6.
Through the portal. Tell my husband that.
Right. Layer 2, round 6. Right. Yeah. It's just it's wild. It's that's been coming up a lot. It's like, where are you going? Where are you climbing? You know, because there is a lot of drive to achieve the level of high achievement, the value of high achievement. The Man in the Ring. There's this great poem which I should know by, I think it's Jack London. or Theodore Roosevelt. It's called The Man in the Ring. Yeah. The Effort of High Achievement. It's a great poem. I wish I could. I will memorize it for our next podcast.
By tomorrow. Well, Freddie, you are doing amazing things, and you are about to be on a panel in just a few minutes. So we're going to let you run and catch your breath. But one final thing, can you just share with everyone watching and listening one final piece of advice, something they can start doing today for not just health and wellness, but more joy, energy? I mean, you are just full of all of that life.
I mean, listen, if I had one piece of advice for people that catch this interview, or you come into the field through the Biohacker Babes or the Beautifully Broken podcast or wherever, that you make a list of the assets that you have today. And I promise you can always look forward and back and experience people who are so much better off and so much worse. Like we have, I mean, I do this little game where I walk people back to like 1491 in a feudalistic society, and you're 30 and you look like you're 60, and you have like leprosy and you're farming, and if you're not the royal family, you're no one. You have nothing, like back-breaking labor, right? Times have gotten so incredible for the human race. For most people, right, we could argue that the access to information and leisure and like the magic, I have a box that gives me information whenever I want it. I don't even have to touch it, I just talk to it. It's wild. So I could always come up, like I could usually sit down with someone, and even if they're in a bad place, I'm like, I'll make your asset list for you. And there's usually like, oh yeah, that's a good point.
That's awesome.
Yeah. There's a great book out there called Factfulness, which is about how life is incredible now. But we would not believe that because we'd watch the news or whatever. We get swallowed up in the narrative of how we're in this state of lack. So I would say build that belief system around how amazing life is. What a great time to be alive. We're super lucky to be inhabiting these physical bodies. If this is real, who knows?
My head.
But my head. All of it. And then build off of that. Right? Build your belief system that anything is possible, that there is magic and woo-woo. We don't know what the physical reality is, that we, through these biohacking tools, water, fasting, plant medicine, AmpCoils, all the things, we can increase our vibration, but we will not escape the pain of being human. And we're not here to be pain-free. We're here to, in my experience, from my understanding, we're here to learn from these things that are gifted to us. Otherwise, you are smited with disease and cancer and illness, and that's a tough spot to exist. So I've chosen not to narrate my experience that way, and maybe try that one if it worked for you, if it resonates. Yeah.
Always full of the best advice. I love it.
The narration is so powerful. And you are vitamin J for joy. We're so grateful for you. Can we hug on the podcast?
Yes.
Yes.
Camera hug.
Biohacker Babes.
Thank you so much for joining us. Freddie Kimmel, Beautifully Broken Podcast. Lauren, Renee, Biohacker Babes. And thanks for tuning in today.